Outrun was released in 1986 in several different arcade cabinet form factors. On the left here, you can see one of the stand-up versions, and on the right, one of the sit-down versions. Arcade1Up, in their home cabinet design, seems to have mashed some version of these two cabinets together for their home version, which we're looking at now. Now, it actually looks okay, and it's pretty comfortable, but is nowhere near what you would expect considering the source material. So, as I detailed in a previous video, I added a tractor seat, and I also pushed the pedals further into the cab and made them vertical so that it would feel more like the authentic sit-down cabinet. But even with those mods, I still felt dissatisfied with how the whole thing looked overall, so I decided to redesign the bench completely. I also swapped out the 17-inch monitor for a 19-inch and added a Fresnel lens, which I detailed in a separate video. The thing that annoyed me the most about the original Arcade1Up design is that you in essence have a blue cabinet with a red bench and nothing that ties the two things together. To address this design issue, I introduced this white strip that I'm highlighting here, which extends the white from the middle of the Outrun logo into the bench and just ties the whole thing together. Additionally, it brings in another element from the original sit-down arcade that makes it look a little bit more authentic. Finally, you might have noticed I deleted the Outrun logo that was on the bottom of the red bench because it was redundant and ridiculous. Here's a previous modification I made to my Outrun bench when I added a tractor seat. If you're interested in this particular portion of the mod, I go over it in detail in another video. I designed these side wings and had them cut via CNC by a vendor on Etsy, which I'm going to link to in the description below. The pieces were cut from plywood, which is very coarse, and I wanted to fill in the wood grain so that when I applied the vinyl, it would look smooth and consistent with the rest of the bench. To do that, I used this Elmer's wood filler, which you can just spread on like peanut butter on a sandwich, and it was pretty easy. You don't have to get it very smooth because any which way you do it, you're going to have to sand it down. This is a close-up of the edges, and you can see there's lots of little pits and holes, which are definitely going to need to be filled in. Here's a shot of both pieces fully sanded down by machine and then also by hand with several different grits of sandpaper. And it looks really smooth and feels really smooth to the touch. And here it is after 3 coats of gloss black spray paint. And as you can see, it's a lot nicer than it was before, but it's not as glassy smooth as I had hoped. If you look very closely, some of the wood grain is still coming through a little bit, and this was just completely invisible to me before I had spray painted it and could see it in the light like this. The reason you want it to be this smooth and glossy is for vinyl adhesion. Vinyl will stick best to smooth, glossy surfaces. So if we had done this directly onto the wood, there's a high probability that the vinyl would have peeled off in short order. You might have noticed on the back of my cab I have brake lights. Now those red lights are actually bicycle lights. The problem is that they're battery powered. So to power them permanently, you have to buy this adapter which converts any battery powered device into something that you could just plug into the wall. In my case, a power strip. So here are the little holes that I had to drill into the back of my bench in order to snake the power cable through. To delete the Outrun logo at the bottom of the bench here, what we're going to have to do is lay over an entirely new piece of red vinyl. And to get it to conform to the shape of that curve there, what I'm using is Knifeless tape. Now, Knifeless tape is something that you put on along any sort of shape or design that you want, and you lay the vinyl over the top of it, and then when you pull up the tape from underneath, it cuts the vinyl. Now, I'm going to link to a separate video in the description that teaches you how to use Knifeless tape, because it's not that easy, and you're definitely going to need to practice. The other thing you might notice here is that I'm applying the vinyl wet. I don't know how people do it dry without getting a bunch of bubbles, but there's a lot of advantages to doing it wet. One of which is if you make a mistake, you can fix it. You can pull up the vinyl pretty easily, wet it down again, and then just start over. This is a close-up shot of the vinyl after it's been laid down on top of the Knifeless tape. And if you look, you can see the shape of the Knifeless tape there underneath. Here's that new gigantic piece of red vinyl that we've laid over the bench before it's been cut with the Knifeless tape. What I'm showing here is the vinyl piece for that white strip that we were talking about earlier that ties the whole cabinet together. And it's going to come printed like this. And you're going to need to lay it on, make sure that it's in the right position, and then cut around the shape of the bench once it's been applied to get everything to look right. Here's the bench with both those pieces of vinyl applied, and the top white piece that we were just talking about has been applied and then cut along the shape of the bench, and the bottom red piece, which is deleting the Outrun logo, has been cut to shape with the Knifeless tape. Now it's time to screw on the side wing shapes, and what you see I'm highlighting here is a little bit of what looks like water damage at the edges of the cabinet, and this was from applying that red piece of vinyl wet. The water got underneath the original Arcade1Up art a little bit, but don't worry about that, because after a few days this completely dries up and it looks like nothing happened at all. So don't let this discourage you from applying vinyl wet. We're going to be using 1-inch flathead screws to mount the wings to the sides of the bench. After you screw on the side wing, you just apply the vinyl and you are done. Now, I'm going to link to all of the graphic files in the description below, along with my preferred vinyl printer, Vinylty, who will not only print everything beautifully, but also cut that wing shape exactly to size, so you only need to apply it. I'm also going to be linking to my preferred CNC cutter that I used, who will cut the wing shape out of any wood of your choice. I just chose to have it done in plywood. So the wing and the graphic will be cut perfectly to size. So all you need to do is prep them and apply them. As a final finishing detail, you can add 1/2-inch black vinyl tape to the edges of your bench and to the wing, and it makes everything just look nice and polished.